Well, good evening and welcome to the October 27th, 2011 Environmental Advisory Council meeting. Our first order of business is to have an approval of our previous two meeting minutes. That would be the July and August meetings. We did not have a September meeting because we lacked a quorum. So that meeting was never even held. So the previous two minutes would be the July and August meetings. Does anybody have any comments or corrections for those two? Okay. I'd like to get those approved. Anybody want a motion to approve? Okay. All in favor? Next order of business is the announcements, and I have a few. I wanted to mention that the electric vehicle charging station, from what I've been told, has been installed, and it is not operational yet, but it is. It looks like what it's going to look like as of right now. So, what I understand is that sometime in early November, they hope to have a ribbon cutting ceremony, which. In early November, yeah. There's no date set yet, but as far as I know, but you know, they hope to cordon off a few parking spaces and have some press there and make a big to do about it. I know that there's some details that still have to be ironed out with the Township Parking Authority in terms of you know how what the rules are for parking there, and we do need to develop signage to. Communicate those rules to the public, but I don't have the details in front of me, but I believe it's installed right near the senior center in the parking lot adjacent to North Wayne Avenue. So everybody should swing by and take a look at it. And I guess the only one of us that can actually plug in would be Sloan. So I understand that he's now acquired an electric vehicle, but he's not here yet to boast about it. Hopefully he can give us an update on his. What spot? Was it was behind the senior center? That's what I'm recalling now. I don't have the details in front of me, but I believe it was in that area, sort of in between Wayne Presbyterian Church, the senior center, and North Wayne Avenue in that back parking lot. The next announcement has to do with the leaf collection in Radnor. Round one is set to begin in less than a week. I believe round one of leaf collection, that's the curbside pickup, is November 1st through the 21st, and that depends, of course, on which district you're in or your street is in. And on the Radnor Township website, you can look up your street and find out what district you're in, and then get the exact 1 to 2 week spread that they'd be driving by with the truck. Interestingly, Pennsylvania state regulations prohibit the bagging of leaves and in putting that in your municipal waste stream. Did not know that was actually codified, but apparently it is. So it's especially important that we get your non-bagged leaves out to the curb in this next month, next 3 weeks, I guess. And of course, if you miss that, there's round two, which comes in December, and then if you miss that, of course, you can then bag it and put it in our township's curbside yard waste pickup, which is every once a week on non-holiday weeks. I hope that Sloan can tell us a little bit about the electronic recycling day that happened this past Saturday. Apparently it was a big success. I was not there, but Sloan was.
Yeah, I stopped by and dropped some stuff off. There was a mountain of TVs and computers. I was surprised at the turnout. It was great.
Now, from what I was told, there was 3 tractor trailer loads, or I guess no, they said 3 truckloads of electronic waste. Do you remember what size trucks they were collecting in?
I want to say sort of like those U-Haul trucks you can rent, but pretty like a short body truck, but a pretty good size. And there was one that looked full, and there was at least another truck's worth on the pavement. So they must have got some other trucks. Yeah,
that's great. So of course we'll keep everybody posted on the next time there is an electronic waste recycling event in the township or even in neighboring townships. We often do that on our website. We include neighboring or county events too, which occasionally happen in the media area. So keep your eyes peeled on the Green Radnor website to look for information about that.
And I did circulate that email, and I don't own stock in Best Buy, but they will take TVs, computers, audio equipment, and they do initially charge to take a TV, and then they give you a coupon back for the same amount. So, but they do that daily. So if you have a situation where it can't coincide with a public turn-in, you can go there.
That's great. Okay. So it comes out to be basically free, if you needed something. Otherwise, you're buying something you didn't need, right? Any other announcements?
Well, since we were close in terms of staying with the charging stations, and I don't own stock in the mall either, but the mall, King of Prussia Mall, now has 2 stations installed, and they're about to install 2 more. It was the manager of the mall was on KYW last week for once an hour for about 10 hours. So I think the first 2 are next to Nordstrom. And the mall is covering the electricity. At this point, it's free until they see how it's used and things like that.
Mm. I wonder if that's part of the same program that our electric vehicle charging station was installed with.
No, it's a different company. I was in the car when I heard KYW, so I didn't write it down, but I didn't recognize the name of the provider.
Okay, great. Thanks, Skip. Any other announcements? Okay, moving along to our work group reports. First on the docket is Climate Protection Group, and we have some fairly important business to hopefully wrap up this meeting. We have our our draft greenhouse gas action plan in a draft state, and what we need to do is go over this plan and I'd like to mention a few areas that I think are a little raw still. What we hope to do is be able to distribute this action plan to the township, some of the key township players, and get their opinions on it prior to sending it to the Board of Commissioners for their approval. So I wouldn't want to send them anything that we thought could be, would give them the impression that this was only half thought through, because of course this is not something that was half thought through. We've worked long and hard on this, but some of the sections maybe just need a little bit more assistance. So if we could just go through this, and in an attempt to reduce paper waste, we're going to try to do this electronically so everybody can just turn their monitors on, and we'll go through this. Now, this is a Word document. It's not a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to need to be paging down. So if you could just try to follow along. I'm going to skip the right down to the first item. This text part here is the introduction and the background and the basis for why we're doing this. And actually, I think those sections are pretty good, so I don't think they need much help. The first recommendation is the establishment of a Radnor Municipal Green Team, and I think this is an item that doesn't have a whole lot of technical parts to it. It's just really kind of an idea, and I think it's fairly sound, and I don't think we need to work on this much more. And what I'm going to do is just ask anybody to just speak right up as I'm going through to stop me if they have any comments about it. Let's see here. I'll use the mouse. The second one is a self-funding green project budget account, and that's the idea where we have an account that gains funds by other greenhouse gas emission saving projects. Those savings can get shuffled into this green account, and then new projects funded with that money. Again, I'm not sure that we need to put any technical details into this recommendation that aren't already there. It's not like this is actually going to save greenhouse gas emissions directly. It's going to sort of do that by facilitating new projects. So I think that one's okay. The third one is the streetlight conversion, LED conversion. I had done a lot of the legwork on this one. And the numbers that are in here, the savings and the potential savings, that is, and the estimated cost are, well, specifically the potential savings are 2005, based on 2005 values. And what I'd like to do is, before we submit this to the township, is to bring this into 2011 dollars, because the cost of electricity has changed significantly since 2005. So our estimated annual savings are going to be increased. They're going to be better. The greenhouse gas savings should be the same. That won't change. And actually, since we wrote this, probably the cost to implement these streetlights has actually gone down as the technology matures and more people buy them. So I'm going to make it my job to tighten up those numbers a bit. And the traffic signal LED conversion, Ann had done the legwork on this one. And I think this one is pretty good. Again, there are 2005 dollars that we discuss in here. And so, for instance, we think that it could save $14,000 in 2005 value. So what I'll do is, at the same time I'm working on the streetlights, I'll put an effort to tighten that number up a little bit into 2011 dollars. Number 5 is to improve the household recycling rate. And the idea on that one is to encourage our residents, for the most part, because they're the ones generating most of the municipal waste that the township has to dispose of. Encourage those residents to recycle more of their waste. I believe this one was Sloan, right? And Sloan, your second go around on this one is very nice. Has some good ideas on how to implement a couple of interesting ideas to improve their the ratio of waste recycled.
Thank you. I have an update about the electronic recycling that happened just this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can actually tweak the wording here on the, what is that, the second and third bullet points, to talk about how this has actually been we've had our first, and hopefully we'll be able to do it on a maybe even a 6-month basis. But we can,
okay,
when we get to that in the agenda, we can talk a little more about that.
Okay, so the amount of greenhouse gas savings that we anticipate is kind of directly related to how much waste we can divert from the incinerator to the recycling stream. Do you believe that there's any way that we might be able to take a shot at that before we submit this? The idea being, if we can determine sort of what ratio of waste to recycling we have now, and maybe a target that we have of, let's say, a 10% improvement in that. We, with the calculation software that we have from ICLEI, we can actually come up with a greenhouse gas tons of savings.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and I think some of the other action plans from some of the other townships actually put some numbers around that as targets. So let me take a try at that. Maybe we can talk about what our targets, realistically should be. But I think that is something we could put some numbers around.
Okay, great. Yeah, and in the implementation, you'll see that I said this is partially implemented since 2005, because we have done some great things in the township in terms of improving recycling, and we're obviously not ignoring that. I mean, we've done a single stream waste and other things that have already improved it. But so now we're going to look to the future on how we can continue. I'm not sure if there's any way to put a cost estimation to it yet.
The biggest costs are these sort of recycling containers, which aren't that expensive, but, you know, $150 per, and, you know, however many we think is a reasonable, you know, number around the township in key places. That's probably the biggest single cost.
Okay.
But I could, you know, I could put a number in there.
Okay. Number 6 is improve the yard waste recycling. And a lot of this has been implemented, but let's see. And who was this? Was Dan? Okay, Dan.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think it was Peggy Hagan might have some numbers on what was collected, and I haven't contacted her yet, but I could do that and try to
Yeah.
get some background.
Yeah, and some of our recommendations are education, including, you know, what the yard waste recycling program is all about, and the use of mulching mowers, and let's see, do we have anything in here that was actually going to cost money? Okay, so it doesn't seem like that we have a lot of work to do in terms of the cost to implement, but the estimated annual greenhouse gas emissions, we could probably take a crack at that if we just had an idea of what we did this past year.
Mhm.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'll give her a call. And I forget if, was it the Swarthmore we had a plan from? Where was the other plan?
Oh, we had a Haverford?
Haverford.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if they had information in there. I'll take another look at that.
Okay, great. Okay, number 7 is green power purchasing, and I'm going to talk to Robin about this one. This one has a couple of blanks in here still, and this is an important one to tighten up. I think this is one of the most important ones that we need to put some solid numbers at. For each percentage of green power or of power that you convert from standard power to green power, you have a real savings of greenhouse gas emissions, and a real chance to either save money or spend slightly more money, depending on, you know, how you arrange the contract to purchase the power. So it's important that we, since this is definitely going to be one of our most important items in the plan, that we put some good numbers to this. So I'll talk to Robin about that.
If you need any help on that, let me know, because I did recently make a contact at PICO with a very helpful lady who is very knowledgeable about electric vehicles, and so she may also be able to help us put some numbers around, you know, the per kilowatt, you know,
Oh, sure.
savings and all that.
Our ICLEI software actually has the ability to estimate greenhouse gas emission savings from kilowatt hours as well, and it adjusts it depending on what your location in terms of, you know, how much nuclear power and how much coal power and whatnot is in there.
As you probably know, the PUC site, I think it's that site that breaks out the actual prices per kilowatt. So and gives options, I think, including options that are green source.
Oh, are you talking about the energy choice?
Yeah, the word PA switch.
PA power switch.
That may be
yeah.
residential only, though. There may be something else for townships, but
Right.
we could work on that.
Okay. Who was working on the tree planting program? Was that okay? Steve, great. Yeah, we have some information here that is slightly old. I think in terms of how much trees that we've actually planted since 2007, that number, that 75 trees, I think is now over a year old. And I was wondering maybe if we could take a crack at updating that, because I know that they continue to plant trees that are donated to us from, I'm not sure if it's Chanticleer or who is donating them, but for each extra tree, that's going to change our greenhouse gas reduction, because there is a per tree component to that. And I'll help you, Steve, to figure out who the right person to talk to is. We've had some people leave the township since then, and we have some new players now too. So, okay, building lighting improvements is actually pretty pretty complex or a long discussion, but then when you get into the cost to implement some lighting improvements at our buildings, we don't have a number of that in there yet. We know how much greenhouse gas savings we can save because there's rules of thumb that you can use that are well defined throughout the industry on how much money you can save by converting certain light fixtures or putting certain controls in, but we should probably get somebody to give us a ballpark cost on what that is. And I think this is Robin, so I will ask Robin for that.
Josh, are you picking up minor typos while you're sitting here?
Sure, absolutely.
The second paragraph starts replacement of above. Second paragraph of this section.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah, so the third line down, it says any type 2 new LED. I think that's meant to be any type of new LED technology, I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Wow.
Thanks.
That's pretty efficient.
Done.
Fixed.
Done. And again, this is for similar to lighting, but this has to do with the buildings. But this is recommissioning the HVAC systems of the buildings and control systems of buildings. And I think this one is pretty solid in that we have a cost to implement, we have an estimated annual savings, and we know about how much greenhouse gas emissions. What I'm going to try to do is convert this 15% into tons, so that we can sort of keep all of them the same. But other than that, this is pretty good.
Got another typo there. Like the first two sentences are basically repeating themselves word for word. So you have recommissioned township buildings, perform review and testing, and then the next sentence starts recommissioning township buildings, review and testing. Says the exact
Got it,
same
yep.
thing.
Okay.
I would just take out that where it says recommissioning township, take out that whole second sentence, except that at the end of that it says, and the township's current requirements, which isn't in the first sentence.
Okay, I'll get that. Thank you.
And then the only thing that was a little odd to me here is down below, estimated cost to implement 27 cents per square foot, and then estimated annual cost savings, $30,000, and then an estimated payback period of approximately 1 year. Like I'm trying to, I can't figure out how did they get the math there.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah,
how did you come from that cost to implement to the annual cost savings?
Good point. This estimated cost to implement it should not be in a per square foot basis. We should put that right into the old, just real dollar value. So take the amount of square feet that we're talking about.
Right, that's what's
multiply
missing
that
is
out.
how many square feet are we talking
so
about?
I'll make sure that gets corrected. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, number 11 is the greening of the township vehicle fleet. Okay, and who was working on this?
I think I was.
Okay, we have a couple blanks in here, and I was wondering if you remembered what we needed to do to fill in some of those things.
I mean, if what we're talking about is replacing vehicles with more fuel-efficient vehicles as they're going to be replaced, then I think that it's a neutral cost. And the time frame, we'd have to find someone in the township. It's a pretty long-term frame, I assume, as they roll over vehicles. So I'm not sure what we wanted to put in there.
Is the police department, they're responsible for their own fleet, or does that roll into a higher level of management?
Well, we were including the police fleet in this in our recommendations, so that they're not separate from this item. They're included in this. Now, of course, they have their own special types of vehicles that they select from. But from what we understood, what I understood from you and from talking to the police chief, was that they have a catalog of like Pennsylvania approved vehicles that they get on a purchasing plan, and that's what they select from, both police and just pickup trucks. And
Right.
so if we believe that the cost to implement is neutral, then we should just probably put that in there.
Okay. Well, should we just put it in?
Yeah, I'll write that down.
Josh, relating to that, when I had worked on the school bus fleet, the school system gets a annual grant for using biodiesel. And I don't know if that's only available to school districts, or could that be available to township fuel budgets? And certain vehicles, at least some of the school buses, went through a major efficiency upgrade, I think in 2007, and that sort of thing might be possible on some of the township vehicles as they retire them too. I don't know if it applies to non-school buses, however.
Okay. Do you know who might be able to tell us that? Would that be Bert?
I can go back to my notes and see what I can find out. The state has renewed the grant apparently every year for
the
the school
biodiesel?
district. Yeah. And, it's high teens in terms of efficiency and reduction in carbon on the fleet. And then as the fleet is, replaced besides, the efficiency is increasing and the footprint's shrinking. But I'll try to find out.
Okay. So we know that there's an amount of greenhouse gases that we can save by improving the fleet over time, like you said, as we roll over the vehicles. And if we could just put are we willing to stand by like this 25% increase in efficiency? And if so, then we pretty much know how much, greenhouse gas emissions we save, because we know how much we emitted. So if you agree, and then what I'll do is I'll just take our inventory and figure out what 25% is, and that'll be our savings.
I mean, that's just an assumption that we made, to have a working assumption. I have, presumably in order to achieve that, you'd have to replace a significant number of vehicles.
Or all vehicles, right?
Um,
Let's say over a period of 15 years, we would probably have a complete rollover of.
Right, that sounds right, yeah.
So this, in that instance, this would be a long-term project,
Yeah.
but with a full implementation in X number of
Right.
years, okay?
Yeah.
Another minor typo for you, Josh. Typo. Up above in the proposed action. Just the third line down says of vehicles in it fleet. Just want an S in there.
Thank you.
No apostrophe.
No apostrophe.
Yeah.
You're right, that would be, it is fleet, and that would be yet another one. Any other, on the vehicles, everybody else okay with that? All right, here's where we're just talking about the school bus fleet. Now, if you recall, we split out the school bus fleet from the township vehicle fleet due to the fact that there was a lot of different recommendations for those two different types of vehicles. So, if I remember, we have a pretty good handle on some of our costs and our savings, but what we do need to tighten up, I think in this one, I believe maybe it was our cost to implement. We said it's $100,000 per bus. If I could just, with your help, Skip, maybe just multiply that by, how many buses we're proposing. Is it?
To address that, again, from my research, they did test drive one hybrid bus, and the technology is always improving and changing, but they felt that the increase in efficiency was not as represented on that particular hybrid bus, and that it was less than 5%, and that the premium, I think it was a $90,000 premium over a typical other bus, and that it would be forever to pay off, so to speak.
I remember that. Now, I think
I think they should revisit it maybe on an annual basis and see if there's a better model out there.
Yeah, if you read our last paragraph in our proposed action section, we did mention that previous test, and we mentioned about a 14% better fuel economy than the standard, and that the district determined that it was going to require higher economy improvements in order to justify that off the purchase price of $80,000 to $100,000 per bus, additional cost. So, we're certainly not recommending here that they, just go ahead and jump for that 14%. That's not what we're doing. So, should we possibly reword our recommendations?
Well, we talked about this a little bit. if they had an extra $80,000 or $90,000 a year, it might be better just to buy 40% biodiesel instead of 20. Because the net savings would be an immediate reduction. They wouldn't be more efficient, but they'd be cleaner. And if the payback is long-term as opposed to forever, maybe immediate payback in terms of carbon savings would be more desirable.
So suggest that as a short-term solution and suggest that they continue to monitor and revisit the state of the hybrid technology for future purchases.
Well, it comes down to everything we do may or may not be cost efficient, but is, can be very efficient in terms of reducing carbon. I mean, when you plant a tree on your property, it's, you enjoy the tree, but it costs you money, and you water it and you pick up the leaves and everything else. But so you don't get a payback except in an intangible way. If the school district can afford some expenditures, which they do for all sorts of reasons, to reduce the carbon footprint, that might be a better thing than, again, the hybrid bus. Short term, when the efficiencies get higher, maybe it makes sense, or when the cost premium drops.
I think it's a good point. I think, if I recall, I don't believe we had a separate section for biodiesel. So
Well,
maybe,
That seems to be discussed in this hybrid school bus fleet. The second paragraph
second
talks about
paragraph.
the use of biodiesel.
okay. So I think what we ought to do is maybe clarify what where we're at, like what our recommendation is. Right now, this is a lot of facts that we sort of put out there, and what I think we should do is back off a bit on the replacement, upgrade of the fleet. Back off a bit on that, maybe and indicate that there's some research to be done and maybe some testing to do. And then strengthen our position on the biodiesel.
I'm willing to bet you that the tests are free, if you know what I mean. They could annually test a new hybrid and measure it against whatever standards they need to measure, because I suspect that the manufacturer really wants us to buy them. So maybe there is a point where it will make economic sense, and it just should be an ongoing practice and procedure, the district and our recommendation, that they test drive 1, 2, maybe 3. There's only 3 or 4 major manufacturers. They probably all have one hybrid bus. Unless there's a major manpower cost or labor cost for the district, they could be testing those buses once a year.
It's possible that the manufacturers would even support that maintenance.
That could be our recommendation too. Because, I mean, even if it doesn't have an immediate carbon reduction, I guess there would be a tiny carbon reduction even for the test, but the whole point of this is when it makes sense, why miss a year or two? Because you put off testing, or you said, well, we did it 5 years ago and it doesn't pay.
Do you think it's worth asking one of us to possibly contact a school bus manufacturer and see if there's such a program in existence, whether they're willing to do that?
I would like to drive a bus. I was actually thinking that in terms of an action item would be either allowing us to present to them, if they don't want to keep up with the industry or the trends. I'm sure they do, but, allow us to, give an opportunity to talk to them about the enhancements, to kind of keep them in the loop if it's something they don't want to do.
I would venture to guess that they probably keep up to date, but I'm not positive. I know they're still buying school buses. My son's riding in a brand new school bus this year, so they have to be getting some kind of education from, at least from the manufacturers, what kind of education that the manufacturers are wanting to deliver anyway. But if we could find out from the manufacturer what they are telling the school district as far as what kind of options that they have in their fleet, we could then find out, well, what data is the school district not getting, because maybe there's other manufacturers or so. I think this one might need just a little bit more research.
I like
The only other comment back from the test is that they deliberately test it in real-time conditions, and in our particular district, which, if you're testing in Menlo Park, California, maybe it's flat, You know, you're testing in Radnor, it's uphill and down Dale. So they felt that the first test hadn't adequately met the proposed efficiency standards that the bus manufacturer was saying was available. Because in a real test, it wasn't delivering it. That being said, technology changes every year.
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll, after the meeting, I'll distribute an email with some needs that we have, and I'll ask for volunteers. So if you could pick something on that list that interests you, but we gotta sort of turn it around kind of quickly because we want to be able to distribute this to our township employees by the next meeting, so. This is the Environmental Advisory Council meeting, sorry. Sorry, sir. That's okay. It should be very interesting. All right, number 13, implement.
Hey, sorry, Josh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
gotta just tell you one thing here. Up at the top of the hybrid school bus fleet, just the second paragraph, there's a question mark in parentheses after 2009. I'm just thinking for the final version, we shouldn't have a question mark in there.
Clearly,
So-
yeah.
I think it was 2009 for sure.
Okay.
All right, now I've heard it for sure, so it comes right out. Implementation of energy efficient IT practices. This is Steve's brainchild, and I think
Yes, very exciting.
it was a good idea. It was a very interesting idea, and that is the general concept is to instead of picking and choosing smaller ideas we had in terms of shutting down computers at night and whatnot, it was sort of take a step back, look at a little bit broader picture in terms of how computing is done, on a whole here in this building specifically, and how data is stored and how backups occur and that kind of stuff. We have a lot of vague assumptions in here. Estimated greenhouse gas emission savings, significant. Cost to implement, high. So I don't know if this is one of those items that when we present to the IT department here at the township, they're going to already have some knowledge about it. They're probably going to already have some opinions on the matter, and they might be able to help us with some of these assumptions, like in terms of the cost specifically.
Yeah, I kept it broad, and probably the estimated cost, annual savings are general, or maybe don't correlate to the proposed action. I mean, there's some areas where the township, it's a no-brainer, where you could begin saving energy costs from an IT or computing perspective. That's really why I wanted to put it as do an evaluation, like at least put them the task, so we actually know what they're doing and how they're currently doing it. And then they might be able to identify specific areas of, you know what, we could actually deploy X somewhere else or something like that. But
So what you're saying is that this is not necessarily the implementation of these practices. It's actually just like take an evaluation of what technology.
And I probably didn't correlate I put estimated cost to implement. That's probably more of a focus, like, outsourcing your IT to the cloud or something like that, which actually may not be high. I'm regretting putting that word in there right now.
That's
But,
okay. That's okay. That's why we're not distributing this yet. So maybe what we should do is leave the unknowns or leave not available in for the costs and the cost savings.
Yeah.
And make sure it's clear that this is an evaluation of the practice, which it pretty much is clear.
Yeah.
But this is clearly an evaluation of the technology, not an implementation yet.
Yeah, I don't think we want to come to them and say, you have to move all your servers to the cloud or something like that. We're not ready to defend that position, but I think we're in a position to defend that they need to look at that. That's something they need to evaluate right now, because we could be burning dollars on energy costs, that we shouldn't be. And that's proven, that's a big initiative in the government, is to, like the feds, they're closing data centers left and right and migrating their computing. So as a municipality, I think there's there's a big trend I think we need to make sure we're in tune with.
Are we in a position to help them do that evaluation, or we're just assuming that they're all over it?
Probably not. I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Well, we know for a fact that they've considered it, right? I think, didn't you tell me that, maybe I'm confusing my issues here, but I know that, they've considered the shutdown software. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
And-
someone
and
came back to us and said that.
There was
There's, like,
problems.
Concerns over like
Concerns,
data
okay.
loss. and-
But in terms of this cloud computing, or thin client computing, I'm not sure if they've considered it, but, if we put it in terms of an evaluation, it doesn't necessarily need to mean that they evaluate it themselves, or that, or we evaluate it, but maybe there's,
Yeah.
maybe
Well, I
we can
think it's-
outsource that as get a consulting firm to do
But we
it.
definitely need to take out the cost to implement, right?
Yeah.
And not,
Yeah, I don't know
is that-
why I put that in there like that, but I think that's, I mean, the way I really look at it is if they're not, because there's a lot of energy efficient ways to be doing computing, if they're not doing them, I think we need to probably know a reason why.
And there's other benefits too besides this. Maybe we ought to take a crack at those as well, right?
Yeah.
There's security issues, there's data security in terms of backups, and okay, so
Yeah.
I think we're on the same page, right?
Yep.
So
I'll tighten it up.
okay,
I mean, I'm assuming we have a data center. Like, I don't even know what our computing infrastructure looks like, so they may say, none of this applies, so.
this is a pretty tight one. This is the green green procurement policy, and where we encouraged less packaging, recycled materials in the things we purchase, the Energy Star and WaterSense labels on pieces of equipment that we buy. I think this one is pretty good. A lot of it is, unknown in that the township really doesn't have a whole lot of equipment that they buy that would ever be Energy Star rated. Although I guess computers would be, but really this is kind of I thought it was kind of encouraging the township to develop a policy. And going forward, it makes it easy for the procurement teams in whatever department to make just better decisions on what they buy. If there's something, if there's an easy label to look for, like WaterSense, then, and I'm not really, and I don't really believe that there's a huge upcharge for those things. I mean, anybody who's bought a dishwasher recently, you'll notice, I mean, 80% of them are rated Energy Star, Anybody have any opinions on that? We can leave this one kind of vague. Sustainable Parks Policy. We had a lot of unknowns in this one, and this is you, Dan, right?
Yeah, should we be suggesting that they do a further reduction of 5 or 10%, or that's sort of what's not defined here, is what is the goal?
Mhm.
I mean, there's these things we could do, but they're not quantified. I'm talking about increasing plantings, but I don't say how much. The last two are, more sort of educational items for the township, so those aren't going to be big money savers.
Well,
So if anyone has any thoughts about how we,
I like the recommendations. I think they're great recommendations, and definitely the A and B will have an effect on our greenhouse gas emissions.
right,
And if we can put a conservative goal on how much property we stop mowing, or we reduce the
Yeah.
frequency of mowing on, we can take a shot at the greenhouse gas emission reduction.
did you say you had some numbers on that?
Yeah,
Like how much gas they're using and that sort of stuff?
And I looked for it. What we have is we have a vehicle-for-vehicle record of every single time they filled it up, And so I went through and I was looking for the mowers, and they're not on there for some
No,
reason. So they must gas their pickup truck up and then gas up the mowers with the same account. So
Right.
I'm not. I thought I had that, but I don't. So we'll have to go backwards.
Should I call the township and try and get some numbers for how much acreage they mow, and then I'm thinking it's hard to say, more than 5% at this time, right? Like, it's hard to imagine that suddenly, of all the acreage we mow, we're just gonna take out 10% or more. That just seems like a lot to me. I imagine in the parks, they've sort of figured out where's the wild area that they're letting grow as a meadow versus mowing it.
And they have done some of this reduced mowing
Yeah.
Policy changes already. So I have notes from my meeting back almost a year ago now about and I recall there was definitely future improvements that were available in terms of reduced mowing schedules, or choosing lots to stop mowing, or portions of the lots to stop mowing. But I can't remember, acreage or anything that was specific. So.
And who was that meeting with that you met?
I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
And I'll get.
I'm happy to make some phone calls.
Okay.
And try and get some baseline numbers, and then we go from there with a percentage.
All right.
And then.
Yeah, Public Works would. So I'll get with you.
And then
after the
maybe they
meeting.
can even help us translate, if that's so many acres, it takes so much gasoline to mow an acre, and maybe get some labor worked into that number as well, right?
Mhm.
If you're not mowing, you're not paying someone to mow, so.
Great. Coming down towards the end here, the Willows Mansion project that was completed last year has some substantial greenhouse gas savings that are going to result from it, including window project and geothermal. I've pestered as best I could to find this data, and I've been unsuccessful so far. But what's good about that is that this has already happened, and this is not a recommendation. So this is actually just there as a placeholder for an important project that's already happened. So I think I'll make another couple shots at it, because certainly when we do our follow-up reporting on how everything is progressing and our whether our action plan is working, this has got to be part of that, so that we can track a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I think it would be, if we got numbers around that, actually, because we're proposing some really interesting things, some of them costly, some of them not, and if we show one where
Success.
this was completed, this was successful, I think that would go a long way.
Okay. I think we have a little bit of work cut out for us. I will put together a list, as I said, of some help that I need, and if we could just get some volunteers to bang this out in the next couple weeks, I think this is going to be good to go to the township.
I mean, I'll do the two that I originally did, and the tree planting and the IT practices.
Okay.
Yeah, same with me, Josh. I'll take the parks and the yard waste recycling, try and get some numbers on those.
Okay, sustainability series. That's our work group, sustainability work group. There's two things I wanted to go over, and one was the upcoming sustainability series on electric vehicles. We had hoped that it was going to be in the fall, but we are now planning on, I think, do you recall, is it in January? or
January
February?
26th.
January 26th. Great, and now that's at our normal meeting, right?
After the normal meeting.
Oh, it's after, sorry. Okay, so
Right.
it'll be at, say, 7 o'clock.
Right.
Okay, and then our normal meeting will sort of roll right into it. And you're going to have some firsthand knowledge. So.
I am. Recently purchased a Volt, and so far so good. Plugging it in at home in my garage in a normal 120 volt 3-prong plug, and it's great. It charges up. Takes about 10 hours to charge up. I'm getting about the mileage I was hoping to, meaning about 35-40 miles to a charge. Interesting. I'm trying to do a little math in terms of the savings per mile. So the math so far looks like I'm getting about 3 miles per kilowatt hour. So this is the new metric is a kilowatt hour. On my Pico bill, I'm paying about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. I haven't shopped around yet to see if there's a better deal. I think I might be able to bring that down a couple cents, but just on that math, I'm paying about 6 cents per mile on the electric car. The comparable gas vehicle, the Chevy Cruze, which is what the Chevy Volt is based on, is rated for 28 miles per gallon, city highway average. So at today's $3.50 a gallon, 28 miles per gallon, that's 12.5 cents per mile. So I'm a little less than half the cost, and I think I can do even better as I learn to drive even more efficiently, and also shop for the best electric rate. I talked to Pico, hoping that they had a rebate program. They don't currently for electric vehicles, although they are thinking about it. And they are working with townships around the area to put in charging stations, as we're doing. And I think they are looking for. They've purchased some Volts, and they've put in a charging station, I think, in Berwyn, as well as they're currently working with Delaware County to put one in a park in Delaware County, and I've got the notes. I think is it Rose Tree Park in Delaware County. So they're starting to get active and are obviously very supportive. So far so good on the Volt. Anybody who wants a ride, see me after the meeting. No, it's a nice car. It's well built, and so far so good. So
Sloan, you mentioned that it's 10 hours to fully charge it.
Yeah.
But does that mean if it's completely run down and you just need to run to the Wawa, if you charge it for 1 hour, do you get 3 miles out of that, or is it
Yeah.
sort of
No, it's not an all
linear?
or nothing. It's if you just wanted to charge it a little bit, you could easily charge maybe 10% in an hour.
Uh-huh.
And what's nice is with the Volt, it has a small gas motor, which it basically, once you've run down the battery power, it shifts over to generating electricity through the gas motor. So it's always running on the electric motor. It's just a question of where the electricity is coming from. Is it the battery, or is it from the generator, just sort of like a Honda generator that you would use around your home to generate power? What's nice about that is that it's, even when you're on gas, it's really quite efficient. And I think I did some math. I was in the 50s when I ran it on gas on a longer trip. It's just as quiet and powerful on the gas. And you don't have to worry about running out of
Right.
the battery charge. Other models, I think the Nissan Leaf is completely electric, and so you would have to be careful in terms of how far you're going.
Right.
It's got a longer range, but it is 100%.
And if you run out of electricity and that gas engine kicks in and the gas tank is full, how many miles do you get before you run out of gas and now you got nothing?
Yeah, it's got about a 8 or 9 gallon fuel tank. So at call it 50, you've got quite a range on gas.
Wow.
Sort of a normal range on gas.
Mhm.
But I've got a fairly short commute, so I've been since that long trip, I've been basically able to do it all on the battery power. And it's pretty easy. There didn't. I think the first generation they had to install some big charging thing in your garage. Now, it literally comes with what looks like a regular extension cord. You just need a normal plug, a 3-prong plug, 120 volt plug in your garage, and there's no additional complexity on that. If you want a fast charger, that's an additional few $100s. It does have to be installed, but I don't think that's a huge expense. And that could charge, that's a 240 volt, and apparently that could charge the volt in something in the 4-hour range. So,
Well, I think it's great. I think every month that you have some new
yeah,
insight into the operation of an EV, we'd love to hear it.
well, I'll be happy to keep you posted. And, as I said, anybody wants to ride, let me know. And we're maybe I should mention the charging station in Radnor has been installed.
I informed the
Okay,
I informed the
great.
group of that.
Okay, great,
And
great. And there is going to be a ribbon cutting
Sometime soon. Yep.
sometime soon, so that's all good.
Would you mind just rolling us right into the water sense?
Not at all.
Tip of the month.
I've got it right here.
You've missed the last one, so you must have a bunch of tips all
You
backed
know.
up, or you can just go with one.
I'll go with the one on if you're thinking about remodeling your bathroom, that there's a lot of water efficiency available in using the WaterSense labeled faucets and other equipment. EPA estimates that a WaterSense makeover of the bathroom would save 7,000 gallons annually, enough to wash 6 months worth of laundry, save 200 kilowatt hours annually, enough to run a refrigerator for 2 months, and save approximately $80 in utility bills annually. Against their estimate is that the fixtures themselves cost about $160, so a 2-year payback for an efficient bathroom makeover with WaterSense materials. They also note, and I didn't realize this, they say that at least 2/3 of the United States has experienced or is bracing for local, regional, or statewide water shortages. And so, because populations continue to rise, using water wisely helps save this vital resource. I hadn't realized it was that large. 2/3 of the United States either facing or bracing for water shortages.
We had one here. We've had droughts here.
Yeah, that's right. Despite,
Yeah, and that has
Despite this summer.
that has a lot to do with increased demand, increased development,
yeah,
right? And taxing the same water source for increased use.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and they say if 1 in every 10 American homes upgrades a full bathroom with WaterSense labeled fixtures, we could save 74 billion gallons of water and about $1.6 billion on national utility bills per year. So, something to think about as we think about a bathroom makeover. Also wanted to note that EPA named the WaterSense Partner of the Year Cobb County Water System. Actually, the second year that this water system has received the Partner of the Year award. It educates Georgia consumers on water efficiency through events and presentations, leading to an 80% familiarity with WaterSense among its area consumers. So, pretty good stuff.
Thank you, Sloan. Last work group is the community environmental awareness, and I'll handle both of those. Both those items. One is I want to give you a quick update on what Wayne Elementary School is doing these days. We've had a change in principal there, and a change in some leadership in the school, and that has actually affected what the Green Committee, of which I volunteer for, has affected what our committee thinks that we should focus our efforts on. And we've made a switch this year to focus back to the basics, and that's going to be recycling, teaching the kids about recycling, specifically lunchtime lunchtime waste reduction is the idea. I spent an afternoon observing the 5 lunches that run through the Wayne Elementary School, and I guess I saw 4 out of the 5. I saw 1 kid use the recycling bin.
Oh, really?
Oh, and I tell you what, there is a lot of recycling that is generated.
Was it your kid?
Well, no, he brought his lunch, all washable stuff, so he doesn't have any trash. But the kids who buy the lunch there, they have plates and cups and other recyclable items. And really, what it comes down to is we think it's just an education thing. It's getting the kids familiar with what is recyclable, and getting them in the habit of doing it. So that's going to be. We've decided that we're going to take a step back and tackle that issue again.
Is it not clear where the recycling should go?
No, it's as clear as a big blue recycling bin can be. It really comes down to do the kids know what goes in it? Do they know that a milk container is recyclable? Is a milk container that's 3/4 full of milk recyclable? Yeah,
Right.
It's those kind of things.
So education.
We got to
on-
educate these kids. We got to educate the staff on what's acceptable in the recycling can, and we need to get in there during lunch and help the kids make good decisions when it comes time to clear their tray,
Right.
put what goes where, and hopefully get some input from the janitorial staff.
Right.
That they can give us some ideas on what would make their lives a little easier too.
I mean, maybe also some sort of poster or something over the recycling, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we made a mobile.
Yeah.
I was,
a recycling mobile. It's full of fishing line with cups and plates hanging from it, and
Cool.
juice boxes, and then we brought it to the school, and it's all tangled up in a knot. So we're gonna come up with a better idea.
Right.
I was at IKEA, I think it was, and I was thinking about what they had done, but they had, this would be a pain for people you'd have to buy stuff, but they had multiple containers for their trash areas, so it was like, black, white, orange, and whatever, and they had very small holes, and so I was waiting for my packages to come. I was sitting there thinking about why they would do this, and I think it makes you think about what you're putting in there. It posts like a big bin, we just walk by, dump your tray in, you force them to make a decision as to where they're putting whatever they're putting. So I don't know if that's something you want to keep in mind.
Small holes, meaning you can't just
like,
dump the
jam
whole
your
thing in
lunch
there.
tray in
I
a
like that.
smaller cylinder. So
Another stray thought I just had is if a particular package is something that has to be recycled, I wonder if, since the school district buys a lot of certain things, they all have like blue stripes or blue dots or, blue label or something like that. And then, then blue would go in blue.
Yeah, all good points. So I'll keep you up to speed on how that works out this year.
Do they collect any data on how much they're recycling? So it could be measured
I
as-
believe so. Yeah,
That might be interesting.
it's not the township that collects for the schools. It's a private contract, I believe, that collects recycling. So I think they do have that in tons. I am excited to show you my home energy audit that I have completed last month, and I have brought the report that the home energy audit comes with, and I'm going to present it to you, and I'm going to just sort of skim over some of the things that are included in a report like this, and my goal is to encourage our group and people watching in the community to go get one immediately, because I think they're an excellent value. Even if you decide not to implement anything that is discovered in them, you learn a lot about how your house works. And I have a background in the energy auditing business, and even I was learning things in a home energy audit. So I think it's valuable, and hopefully I can make sure that this is available for people to see on their website. Maybe they'd be interested in poring over it in a little bit more detail. So I had we had a presentation here maybe 3 months ago from somebody who encouraged people to take advantage of this program that offers discounted home energy audits. And I went home and signed up. And so I can give you the website. And the company or the program is called Energy Works. And I don't have it here, but the website is energyworksnow.com. And you want to make sure that you're in the home Energy Works section. And if you are, right on that website, there's a big button that says apply now for an energy audit. And you can do it all online. You fill in your name, your contact information, and you fill in some details about your home. And the next day, you'll get an email from them confirming some information, and they'll follow up with a phone call. And next thing you know, you pay with PayPal or whatever, and you're scheduled. Now, I didn't have a energy auditor in mind when I did this, so they were able to recommend one that was local and who was experienced with some of the equipment that I had in my house. If you have one, if you have an energy guy that you like or you've used in the past or a friend has recommended, you can actually just request that you use them, and this program will cover that person. So when he first came, he asked me if I had any concerns about my house in terms of what was working for me and what wasn't working for me, if I had any things that were uncomfortable. So I told him about the fact that my geothermal system, which is sized very tightly to my house, couldn't really keep up on a windy, cold day. And there was some temperature fluctuation in the house in terms of sometimes the one floor was hot, so and another time of the year a different floor was hot or a different room was hot during a certain time of day. And what they do is they take note of all that, and then after the audit is finished, after the walkthrough is finished, they present some ideas on why those problems might be happening, and then present some ideas on how to fix those problems. So typical with an old house, and mine's from the 1890s, I have a leaky house. There's air leaks everywhere, and there is a lack of insulation in most exterior walls and roofs. So it's really of no surprise that I have poor insulation and poor ceiling, but you can see that under my root causes of some of my concerns, poor insulation and poor air sealing are mentioned quite often. So what I want to...
Did they identify where exactly, or did they pretty much...
Sure, yep, they show you where, yep. I presented him 12 months, and I'll show you that in a second, Sloan. I gave him 12 months of my utility bills, and that helps them understand how much money you're spending on energy use, and therefore also helps them understand how much money you can save by doing some improvements. I thought this was really interesting. Through a very careful analysis, and when I say careful, I mean he measured the height and width of every single window in my house, every wall in the house, every roof, the whole outside of the house was measured. And then by entering that information into a computer program and understanding how much energy that I use in my house, they can determine where the energy is lost through the home. So he knows how much energy I buy from Pico, and now he's telling you where that energy is going. It's going out, and in my case, almost half of my energy is going out through the walls themselves. And then a quarter of my energy almost is lost by air leaking out of the house. So if I could actually correct those two items, I would have 70% of my energy use eliminated if I could eliminate those as losses. Now, of course, you can't ever eliminate them. You're always going to have some. You can only insulate a wall to so much, but it gives you a good flavor on where your energy is going.
Can I ask if you have new windows in your house? I saw that the windows were just 11%. I just had all new windows and doors put in my house, and curious.
I need new walls, yeah.
So, and my windows before were like the 1950s,
Okay.
wooden, double hung, and you'd hold a match where they came together, it would blow the match out in the winter,
I do have old 1890s windows, but I also have the triple track storm windows on the outside.
Okay.
And that it turns out that that's a very efficient window system. It might not
So
be.
that's probably why your number's so low
Yeah.
here, is you got, okay.
Yeah, he ran something called a blower door test, and then I'm not sure if that comes on the next page or not. Let me see here. Yeah, it's this next page. So a blower door test is where you close up the house as tight as you normally would, say, in the middle of the winter, and then you open the back door and he installs this big fan in place of the back door. And the fan blows air out of your house, thereby creating a suction in your house. And anywhere that the house is going to leak in a windstorm or on a very cold day is magnified. And you can actually just go around with your hands and you can feel the breeze coming in. So you can go up to like an electrical outlet and hold your hand over the electrical outlet, and blowing out of the two prongs is a breeze coming through there. It's really quite amazing. So what the device measures is how many cubic feet per minute that the house leaks at a certain pressure differential. And mine happens to leak 5,505 cubic feet per minute. What the beautiful thing about this, in my opinion, is that 3 years from now, after I've done some improvements in my house, I can get company B to come in with their blower door, a different piece of equipment. But as long as it's a calibrated piece of equipment, they can set it up and they can come up with the same number, or come up with a comparable number to see how much improvement you've done. Because they bring it to the same pressure, and so you can really compare apples and apples to find out how much improvement that you've had in terms of air leakage in your home. I guess you'll see here that ASHRAE, which is the American Society for Heating and Refrigeration and Air Conditioning or something like that, they recommend about a third of, or 0.35 air changes per hour. That means that 35% of the air volume in your home every hour should be replaced for ventilation purposes to keep to keep the air healthy. And I have about 60% of the air, so almost double the amount that should be being changed is being changed. So I have a lot of improvement, and you can see that. Let me see here, a lot of improvement to do. Okay, well, I thought he had a number here somewhere to that, but he then goes into how to fix that problem. Down in the basement was my big issue. I had a lot of leaks coming in under the where the foundation meets the house. That's called the rim joists, and that's a typical problem area. So what happens is, in a cold day, hot air in the house wants to rise out through your roof, and cold air from inside has to come in and replace that air, and it always comes in through the easiest way possible. And in my house, that happens to be the basement rim joist. And when that blower door was going, it was like a wind tunnel down in my basement. It was spider web dust blowing everywhere. It was crazy. So he came up with some good ideas on how to fix that problem. And as another service, they discuss how to improve the health of your home, the indoor air quality. And I had some spots in my basement that were getting some leaks from the outside and had some mold growing on the walls, and he developed some ideas on how to improve that problem. And he was able to get into parts of my attic that I had never even seen before. This is a peek of, this lower right-hand photo is a peek of my roof that it's a large area that I've never even seen before, but he was able to crawl through a hole in the wall and crawl around a corner and show me how insulation of walls and or I guess it'd be insulation of ceilings and inside walls can be done very quite easily in the case of an attic like this, where you don't have to actually tear out walls to get insulation in there. So it was quite interesting. And
could you use this to, would you be able to just hand this to an installation company and say, go to work, or is it, this is a higher level than would be required to actually get the installation work done?
No, in a lot of cases you'll find that these guys that are doing these home energy audits also have either their own business where they do this kind of work, or they have close connections where they're able to recommend somebody. In this case, This gentleman had a insulation business, and he was able to help. He was going to be able to provide quotes for some of that work.
Okay.
But to answer your question, this is probably adequate enough to have somebody come in and give you a quote. Okay, so you might have to do a little bit of more work. But anyway, so you see some photographs of the insulation that's in my attic. What it turned out not to be adequate. Let's see if there's anything else interesting here. Okay. So here's where the list of recommendations are, and you'll see what that to improve the air quality. I had to eliminate some mold in my basement by improving the groundwater, the flow of groundwater around my house. Air sealing, he goes in and very specifically says what wall or what areas need to be sealed, and for insulation, what depth of insulation, what R value needs to be added, what R value can be added, because sometimes you only have a wall with a 4-inch space in it. You can't put 6 inch of insulation in a 4-inch space. So very specific and very very clear report. He recommended I put some duct insulation in my basement. So this is where the point where you would normally on a typical report from this program, you would get a analysis of how much savings you could get by doing a certain project. Okay, so typically they would say, okay, here's some wall insulation that you might consider. Here's the cost it's probably going to cost, and here's how much time it's going to take you to pay back that in energy savings. Unfortunately, my heating and cooling system is geothermal, and the program that this installer uses, which is a very common government-approved program, does not have geothermal as a type of heating and cooling system. So all of the payback values weren't valid. They were based upon an incorrect heating and cooling system. So, unfortunately, I can't show you how what a report on your home might look like. But what I can tell you is that we know how much money I spend a year. We know how much a typical air sealing project might save somebody in percentage of a heating and cooling bill. So I was able to make some really rough estimates on how much improvement I could get on a certain, like an air sealing project or an insulation project. So, how does it sound? Well, I did get a quote. Oh, and by the way, the $150 that you pay for this, you get $50 of that back if you actually implement something that costs over $1,000. Yeah, so you're getting close to a zero cost home energy audit. But I did ask for some quote for a quote on one of my air sealing projects. It was going to be $1,500, and I am probably going to do it, but I'm thinking about doing it myself instead of hiring a company to do it. But so I'll have to give you an update later on that. But yeah, that about does it. I mean, that's the basic.
Was there ever any mention about radon in all this? One of my house, I think when we first bought it, we did the test, and it was, it was okay, but it was, getting close to the borderline. And my wife and I always felt like, well, maybe it's a good thing all our windows are leaky, maybe that 80% air replacement is not so bad.
Right. Yeah, you sure pay for it.
Now we wonder about it with these new windows that
I
are
think
locked up tight.
With I don't like them. Well, I shouldn't say that. But the ventless gas stoves, they say, they don't recommend them for new construction because they're combusting right there and there's no air movement. Whereas the older houses in Radnor and Wayne, they're all leaky and drafty, so you don't have to really worry about the buildup of CO2 too much.
So my home energy auditor, his name was Andy Buck, and I'm giving him a free plug because I thought he did an awesome job. He spent more than 6 hours in my home, and spent way more than that developing the report. So if you think about it, it's really good value. It really
Does
is.
he have, you say he has his own company, or does he have a company?
Yeah, he does. It's actually listed right here in the front. Here it is. And yeah, his name is Andy Buck, and he and his brother, I believe, have a company together, Jim Buck Builder. I think I thought it was in Conshohocken. I'm not positive about that. So sign up for one.
This is great. Really, really inspiring. Thank you.
Sure. So our next order of business is liaison reports. We have one liaison, Mr. Skip.
Well, the Planning Commission was very busy in September. We had to have 2 meetings, a lot of institutional activity. We're going to see the final on November 7th on the underground garage next to the old Luella Court Hotel project. I think that's going to move forward, but, of course, that's subject to review. We are working on a bed and breakfast ordinance, and that's probably in the earlier stages yet at this point, but we were supposed to make a recommendation by December on that.
Is that prompted by an idea, a proposal?
I think it's prompted by a lawsuit, actually, possibly. And this is a, logical resolution of that.
What's a bed and breakfast ordinance?
It gets into how many rooms you can have, whether or not you have off-street parking, whether or not it's permitted in every district, and if it's in the historic district, is the lot size smaller? It's things like that. It'll be on TV on the 7th, so tune in.
I'll be sure to bring my fine china.
Okay. We're allowing refrigerators in the rooms in the current draft, so, little things. So it's not quite just bed and breakfast. It's not related to university housing because in our particular statute, as in most, there's a limitation on the number of continuous days of stay. And I think in ours, it's either 10 or 14. So it would not be suitable student housing.
Thank you, Skip. Moving on to old business. Anybody have any old business? Any new business?
Did you mention the electronic recycling?
Oh, I'm sorry. We did mention that, and we mentioned, I believe Dan attended it as well. Or he
Yeah, I drove past you when you were there.
Good,
But we understand that it was a huge success. And
It was.
Did you have any more information?
I did want to just emphasize what a success it was. Dan, you may have seen it. I mean, it was a constant stream of cars, sometimes 2, 3 deep. Most of the folks had multiple pieces of equipment, TVs, computers. The Champ was a 62-inch big screen TV, but there were several large screen TVs. It was organized or executed by a company called eForce, which is based in Philadelphia. They have a certified recycling center, so the 3 large truckloads of recycled material are taken to that facility, broken down. The hard drives are scraped, so it's secure. Then they use the metals and even the toxic substances, including mercury, gets recycled rather than put into the landfill. And because there's value to the metal and other equipment, there's no charge to the township for having the service. So it was terrific. I talked to the eForce guys. They said several towns are doing it twice a year. So hopefully we could do it again. I did want to thank Peggy Hagan who got this going. And also Jim Corcoran from the township, who was there the whole time helping him out, but it was great. eForce had 5 or 6 guys, so you know, folks didn't have to unload the huge monster, you know, equipment themselves, and I think it went very well. So thanks to the township. I think it was a great day.
Do you know if our trash collectors, if they see TVs and computers, I mean, do they take them or do they leave them?
I think the story is if you have something, you can call the town and have a special pickup for, what is it, $25?
But if you put a big TV out on the curb
there-
next to your
there's a-
trash can, will they take it or not?
There is no, they won't unless you call and arrange for a special delivery, and there is a limit to the size. So many of the TVs we saw this weekend were well beyond the size that the township would pick up. So hence they've been living in people's garage like my big screen TV had for a long time. And you know, you'd have to go quite a ways. I think when we finally did it, it was 30 miles away to a special recycling center for larger TVs. So this was very big service for the townships. I did get a stat from E-Force afterwards as to how much they carted away. It was 3 very large trucks, and it was the total was 21,772 pounds of recycled material, which was quite impressive according to E-Force. And they say often it actually gets even bigger with subsequent events in the same township because people hear about it and you know, start to plan around it. So here's hoping that we get this to be a regular, even twice yearly event. Spring, fall would be great. So stay tuned.
Josh, I had just 2 quick things. Maps. A lot of stuff we talk about is location-based. Let me know if you think a map would benefit something we're doing. I was thinking a charging station to help promote that. And I could maybe put something together and maybe present it at one of the next EAC meetings, and maybe we could talk about trying to get it on our website.
It's an interesting idea on the charging station because there are several. Obviously, there's going to be the Radnor. Apparently, there's one. There's a private one at one of the commercial facilities in Radnor, and as I mentioned, Berwyn's got one. So maybe, you know, something in the area where it's not just the ones that, you know, the public township ones, but also you know, some of the private commercial facilities that are opening up. So,
But if you have any ideas, let me know. And then also, just to keep in the back of our minds, I don't know how we want to address it later, but I know we'd spoken about the Marcellus Shale and taking a look at possible impacts on water supply. I know that's continuing to heat up in the state, and I think it's a topic we should probably be prepared to address from an environmental
about
standpoint.
water local or state ones? Local?
Yeah, I
Local
mean,
water?
if there's any possible effect on our water supply. And if there's not, then I think that's good information that we could probably spread and say, you know what, we've actually looked at it. The drilling isn't going to affect our water supply, but at least be prepared with that information. I think that would be good for us to be on top of.
Okay, well, I appreciate the offer, Steve. And you know, I'm just thinking out loud here that I bet you there's an app, for lack of a better word, or a website or someplace where public electric vehicle charging stations are listed. You know,
There is a site like that run by, is it Department of Energy, I think? When I last checked a few weeks ago, it did not have any listed for Pennsylvania. I think it's outdated. But I could forward the link to that.
I mean, as the number of electric vehicle drivers increases, people are going to need to be able to plan their trips around the need to charge their vehicles, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody who capitalizes on that and develops some sort of an app to facilitate that. And I'm frankly would be surprised if it's not eventually just built right into the car to direct you there and to route your navigation to it, you know, on the shortest possible route. But
That's a good idea.
I think these are all some ideas we should be compiling with when you have questions about it, about electric vehicles and whatnot. We we should compile these questions and prepare them for our sustainability series in January on this, on that
Yeah,
topic.
that's a good idea.
Well, we don't have a public comment portion, so that wraps it up.
Thank you.
Good night.